Welcome back to Lighthouse Health and Safety Podcast. I am your host, Andrew Chandran, and today I'll be sharing with you what I believe is going on well in the WHS profession and what is holding it back. The first thing I'll say is that in my 25 years working as a WHS professional, I've not seen any major improvement in how significant WHS risks are managed. Now that might seem like a bold claim to make, but please let me explain so you too can appreciate why this is happening. So let's delve into the WHS profession and let's see what is right before we delve into what is wrong. Okay, so what are we doing well in WHS? Well, firstly, it is a profession that has no shortage of jobs. Now, why is that? Well, if you look at every industry, or just about every industry around the world, those industries have people. They've got people working, and those people are working on sites, they're working in corporate offices, they are working from home offices, they are working while they're traveling. So when people are working and they're exposed to hazards, they can get hurt. So WHS is a profession that has absolutely no shortage of jobs. Secondly, we are very good at selling WHS because a failure to manage work health and safety risks can cause loss. And that loss might cause harm to workers, but it also causes harm to their families and communities and to the businesses who employ them. Thirdly, we are very good at reacting after there has been a work health and safety incident. You know, someone's got hurt. Well, we need to do something about that. We need to find out why. We're very good at finding out why after the event. But this is a very short-sighted approach when it comes to preventing incidents from occurring. For example, if you look at most risk registers, you will see a bias towards mitigative controls, right? So they are controls that reduce the severity of an outcome or perhaps the likelihood of certain outcomes occurring, rather than preventing the hazard and the person from coming together in the first place. That is what we call a preventative control, the one that prevents the hazard and the person coming together. So we tend to find in risk registers a bias towards mitigative controls. And if you don't believe me, pull up your risk register and have a look. Where are most of your controls? Are they preventative in nature? Do they prevent the incident from occurring? Or do they mitigate the consequences? I once worked for a major mining operator in their critical risk management area. During that review, they identified that 80% of their so-called critical controls were administrative in nature, and they were trying to turn that around. For those that don't understand what an administrative control is, it is one that requires a lot of administration for it to work and be effective. Okay, and they're very people dependent. People following procedures, people instructing others, people being well trained. Very, very complex controls to work well and effectively. The good news with that operator is that, they recognized that they weren't where they needed to be, and they were taking steps to move in the right direction. So there are some areas where I think we're really getting it right in the profession. And there are others, but I'm going to keep this short. Now let's turn to where things are going wrong in the profession. Our greatest strength, which is the abundance of work health and safety roles, because remember, just about every workplace has hazards and people. That greatest strength, that abundance of roles, also creates a diverse spectrum of good practice to poor practice, and opportunities to monetize safety, because when it goes wrong, people get hurt or killed. That's very, very emotive stuff. It motivates people. The problem with this is when you have a huge diversity in skill and experience levels, this can lower the benchmark for what is thought to be good practice. And I'll call this the normalization of poor practice, or the normalization of ordinary practice. Another major threat is not being in the field enough. Workplace health and safety practitioners need to be where the work is being done. Work is done on site. You should be on site too. If you don't understand the work that people do, how can you effectively manage their risk? The workforce will not care about what you know if you don't care about them first. Start with respect. Respect what they know. Respect their time. Respect them as teachers, because you will learn a lot from them. Learn and grow together for better outcomes. Next, people are very good at marketing and selling fear. What is fear? That's what we experience when we have something to lose. In work health and safety, there's a lot to lose. But it's not often you or I that are losing something. It is the people that are exposed to hazards. They can get seriously hurt or killed. It can affect them, their families, and their communities. We are great at marketing fear, and we sell solutions to virtual problems which often sound great, but they are flimsy and haven't been thought through. Now, can I back that up with an example? Let's look at mental health. Big workplace health and safety problem. Or is it? Because I can tell you, since the dawn of time that people were working, since the dawn of the first health and safety legislation, mental health was always part of the equation. You know, last time I looked at myself in the mirror, my head was attached to my body. Oh, look at that. I have a head. I have a brain. It is attached to my body. Can that get hurt? Absolutely, it can get hurt. You know, I don't need something to fall on my head for my head to get hurt. It can hurt from the inside, right? But the reason why mental health has gained a lot of prominence in recent years is simply because it seems like a new phenomenon. It isn't. It's always been there. And in fact, as we progress with these podcast episodes, I'm going to explain to you that way to manage mental ill health is no different than how you manage any other risk out there. And I will show you how to do that the right way. So is mental health really a big problem? Or are we suggesting that it really is? Well, let me draw your attention to one of the most common controls you'll hear recommended by the so-called mental health experts out there. It's called mental health first aid. Now let's just think about this control for a second. In most risk registers for physical types of hazards, you will find first aid as a mitigative control. It is your last line of defense when you can't prevent a person being exposed to a hazard. That person will get hurt, and depending on the severity of that hurt, they may require first aid. If it's relatively minor, they might need first aid, right? But first aid can be life-saving as well. Let's look at mental health first aid. It's still a mitigative control, right? It sits on the right-hand side of the bow tie diagram. It requires a person to be exposed to a psychosocial stressor. As a result of that exposure to one or more psychosocial stressors, the person will experience distress. You must be able to observe the distress, either in what people are saying, or what they might look like, or otherwise. Then you need to be able to intervene successfully, right? Now, it's not going to cure the problem. It's not like physical first aid where you've bandaged the wound heals, and you move on. With mental health first aid, the distress is still there. The thing that is causing that has not been dealt with. Guess what? You're probably going to be brushing off those mental health first aid skills time and time again because you're not breaking the exposure to the psychosocial stresses that are causing the distress. So please be very cautious whenever the so-called experts are trying to sell you a novel product or a service. Ask the seller for 2 or 3 references. Do your homework. Did it work out for them? Why or why not? And then you'll be in a much more informed position to decide if that solution is for you. What else are we getting wrong in WHS? Well, firstly, as I've already pointed out, work health and safety is about people. Without people, there is no risk. So if you want to reduce risk to people, you need to get to know those people a little bit better. You need to understand the hazards that they're exposed to, and you need to be a trusted advisor that can talk to them about their hazards and how they're exposed and what they can practically do to keep themselves safe. You may not come up with the solutions yourself, but through that relationship you build with those people, you'll come up with the controls that work in practice together. So if you don't have a relationship with people, you are not going to know how best to motivate them to come up with those controls. Next, academic or technical knowledge is no good if you can't apply it. This is where pragmatism and practical implementation are king. Businesses in general do not invest enough in work health and safety development. You'll attend the odd training course or awareness session, but it needs to become a routine so that you can continually learn and develop as you go. Another major problem in this industry is we are losing experienced people. And the newcomers are coming in and they don't understand where we have come from. So what tends to happen is they spend decades of their own careers catching up to where the veterans are at the end of their careers. This is why I want to have an impact and share my knowledge right now, because by the time I'm gone, people are going to be learning all this stuff, which is not new, for the very first time. And that is something that we should all be ashamed of. You know, I once had a martial arts instructor that said to me, "Andrew, I am showing you what works and what doesn't from my years of trial and error. By the time you get to my age, you should be better than me." That was a very wise thing. And this should be the goal of every work health and safety strategist out there. Learn from the past, learn from the mistakes, look to the future. We need to move the profession forward. You know, it's about bringing up the next generation to be better than we are. So that requires a bit of a community outlook rather than an internal facing in look. The reason why this isn't happening is because I believe that most people are in it for themselves. They don't really care about the future that doesn't affect them. If they're not in it, they are not interested in it. It's a bad attitude and it will cost countless lives. So that's all well and good, talking about what's going well, what isn't in the profession. But most importantly, what needs to change, right? And I've already alluded to some things that we need to change. The first thing is, and this is really the heart of this podcast series, we need to think correctly if we want to be impactful in WHS. And thinking correctly starts with content that is built on strong principles, not simply opinions. Do you want to be an expert in critical risk management? Then start with the hazards. What are the hazards that can kill people? What are the hazards that can seriously hurt people? Study them. Understand how they are generated, how a person can be exposed to them, and how you reduce how much and how long they are exposed to those hazards. This is the nature of risk. Risk is analogous to exposure. So you'll hear me use the term exposure a lot instead of risk. It's a very simple formula that works well for me. And if you do this well, you'll automatically be in the top 80% of work health and safety practitioners. If you think correctly, you'll develop a growth mindset. So keep learning. Aspire to surpass the knowledge of your mentors. Do something to build your confidence. For me, this happened through public speaking and achieving significant wins in the profession. And I'll talk about some of those achievements in a future session. Be useful. Okay, so I'm taking a leaf out of Arnold Schwarzenegger's book here. Do things that are useful. Stop doing useless things. Work health and safety must be pragmatic. If you're not coming up with solutions through your consultation with the workforce, then you're not going to come up with pragmatic solutions that they are going to own. And they must own them. If you produce paperwork, and let's face it, a lot of WHS practitioners produce tons of paperwork, that paperwork must be useful and it must generate greater value than the time it took to produce it. If you produce a document that doesn't meet this objective, consider whether it is necessary at all. Now, just a little bit of a talk on strategy. Employ superior strategies. What do I mean by this? In my view, a superior strategy is one that achieves multiple objectives with a single action. You could call it efficiency if you want, achieving more with less. I refer to that as a superior strategy. So in this podcast series going forward, if you hear me use the term superior strategy, I'm talking about achieving multiple objectives with a single action. One of the best ways to employ this is to help other people. Help them to grow, help them to develop their work health and safety knowledge. If you are struggling to influence people, it's because they don't have the same relationship to safety that you do. Get to know them better. Find out what motivates them if you want them to move with you. And that word motivate and move are related to each other. If you want to move a person, you must know what motivates them. And there are things that we must stop doing, right? And the first is we need to stop selling dreams. If you are selling dreams, stop. Okay, dreams and fantasies are for people that don't live in the real world. And if you're not selling dreams, are you buying them? Stop buying dreams. Don't be gullible. There are a lot of snake oil salespeople out there in WHS using psychological tactics to motivate you into action. What are they really selling? I'll tell you what they're selling because I have a marketing background. They are selling two emotions, pleasure and pain. In fact, scammers operate exactly the same way. They make you feel good about something, right? So you're on board with what they're saying. Or they make you feel really, really bad about something. In both cases, pleasure and pain motivate you to take action. So be very, very cautious. Am I feeling pleasure? Am I feeling pain? Do I feel like I should be taking action? Be very, very cautious of those. Very simple strategies, but they're effective. Next, what else do we need to stop doing? Stop managing risk in front of a computer screen and start spending more time with the people doing the work. Now remember I talked about superior strategies. Well, this will allow you to forge relationships, demonstrate care and interest in the work that people do. You'll learn about how risks are actually managed. And if you're thoughtful, you will learn how to motivate people to proactively stay safe. Because if people need the work health and safety practitioner to be present, for them to be motivated to stay safe, right? So they don't get caught out, for example, that's a problem, and that's not going to be a sustainable practice. So you want people to be internally motivated to stay safe. And to be perfectly honest, this is really the heart and soul of most behavior-based safety programs. And I'll talk about that in my next podcast, which will be on culture. Lastly, and this comes from my martial arts training as well. Understand the difference between time and timing. Because if you want to be impactful with the actions that you take, you need to time them accordingly. Because not everything needs to be done now, right? You might have a mountain of work, a mountain of actions to do, but if you get the timing right for implementation, you'll get a better outcome, right? This is how a strategist operates. And just an example to finish off. Have you ever heard someone say to you, "We've got an excellent safety management plan," or "excellent safety case, it was accepted by the regulator, must be good," right? And yet people are still getting hurt or killed, right? Well, why is that? It's because most safety plans and most safety cases are very, very static documents, right? They do not embody the principles of strategy in those documents because they're static, they're not fluid, they're not adaptable, right? So when you write a safety plan that's very, very static, this is what I'm going to do, right? And this is the standard I'm going to meet. That is very, very rigid. To change that, to make your plans more strategic in nature, those plans need to become more adaptable. So you need to incorporate adaptability into them. And one of the ways you can do this is to shift away from a sort of a prescriptive-based plan. We will do this way, to we will achieve these outcomes through these principles. Because those principles are what make good health and safety outcomes possible. And when people start thinking about the principles as opposed to the cookbook, step 1, step 2, step 3, and let's face it, a lot of work instructions are written like that, aren't they? Step 1, step 2, step 3. If they work on principles and understand the principles behind keeping people safe, then it doesn't matter what company they move to, what industry they move to, the principles come with them. So that's how you transform static, non-strategic based plans into objective based plans based on principles. And we come to the end of today's podcast. Thanks for staying with me. As I mentioned, episode 3 will be on workplace culture, everyone's favorite topic. But for now, be well, be safe. See you later.